I see a lot of my Assyrian brothers and sisters here, so if I may, I'll take a few moments to greet them in our own language. أخواتي خدماتي را بغداين بغزاين قكولخون لخا خاي قرارا بيور القاتيقد كليتن برقيلوخون بخلت على بيفليا غلدارو تغاني وميقرتا إيزابيل إشتر قد خرطبتتيا قد مقربخ ل تشقيت ديان قملت أمريكيتا وين خزداجن طاينة غديان أمريكايا. I believe we're waiting for the presentation to load up. Until that loads up, brief background about myself. As Fred told you, I was smuggled out of Iran due to religious persecution. I was 16 years old when I was smuggled into Switzerland and then into Germany illegally. And that's where we declared religious asylum and became refugees and came to the US in 1990. I founded Iraqi Christian Relief Council because in 2006 I was watching the news and I saw 2 churches being bombed at the same time in Iraq, in Baghdad. And I saw my own people, my Assyrian people, running in disarray, drenched in blood, and I said, and the whole report was maybe 20 seconds. And I'm an Assyrian Catholic, and when I used to live in Chicago, I used to attend Holy Name Cathedral. So I literally ran into Cardinal Francis George, if you can run into a cardinal. And I said, what is the Catholic Church doing about the Christians in Iraq? The next week, believe it or not, they called me in. They had a meeting and they encouraged me to start this organization because not many Americans know there are Assyrians in Iraq, let alone that they're being killed. And when I say Assyrians, that includes Chaldeans and Syriacs. We're all one people. Next slide, two slides over, please. Briefly about our mission, Iraqi Christian Relief Council raises awareness amongst Americans by joining forces with such entities as CSP, and we go to parishes, churches, synagogues. So if there are those who want us to come in and talk about this to your parishes, please invite us. We will be there. Next slide, please. And we raise awareness. We need Americans to be educated about what is happening in the Middle East to Christians. And we raise funds and we send them for food, shelter, medicine to those who are in Iraq and those who are here in the United States. Next, please. So how many of you, well, there are a lot of Assyrians here, but how many Americans know or knew prior to this conference who Assyrians are? Okay. This presentation, a portion of it is specifically meant to educate those who do not know who Assyrians are. The term Assyrian is derived from Ashur, our ancient Assyrian god. Our history is vast, 6,762 years. We are not Arabs, we're not Jews, we're not Kurds. And the reason I put that there is because every time I say to an American, I'm an Assyrian, they say, oh, so you're Assyrian. And I'm an Assyrian born in Iran. Oh, you're an Arab. How are you born in a Persian country? And that's offensive to us. Assyrianism is a nationality. It's an ethnicity. We are the first people who accepted Christ as a nation, and we still speak Aramaic. This was our empire. It started from the eastern part of Iran, southern Turkey, Iraq, Syria, going to a portion of Egypt. Abraham was born in Ur, and many of us know about Jonah. Jonah went to Nineveh to preach, to give the word of God and ask them to repent. And Ninevites prayed and fasted 40 days and 40 nights. And Jonah is buried in today's Mosul. Nineveh is today's Mosul. Mesopotamians contributed greatly to civilization. These are some of the contributions. King Hammurabi wrote the first code of law, first mathematics, herbal medicine. Babylonians and Assyrians discovered the first herbal medicine, and there's a fantastic book on that, actually. First writing system in cuneiform, and also the first systematic library was formed by Ashurbanipal. This is our alphabet. We have 22 letters in our alphabet. We write right to left. This is our flag. The waves represent 3 rivers, Tigris, Euphrates, and Zab. The circle center is the sun of Assyria, S-U-N, that is shining to 4 corners of the world. And the top is an image of Ashur, if you will, the god of Assyria. Next, please. Assyrian Empire fell to Babylonians in 612 before Christ, and the Babylonian Empire fell in 539 to Persians. And since then, we've been living at the mercy of our overlords in the region. Something very interesting that not many know. This is an image called icon made without hands. A lot of people know that we have converted to Christianity through St. Thomas. But not many know that the king of Edessa, which is Urfa today in Turkey, wrote a letter to Jesus before crucifixion. And he asked him for Jesus to come and heal his disease. And the letter reads that Jesus sent the letter back, declining to go to Edessa, but said, I will send you one of my disciples after my mission is completed in this country. And he took a cloth and he placed it on his face, and he sent the image back to King Abgar. That's his name. And I asked from our bishop, where is this picture, where is this image? And they said it was looted during the crusade times. So it's been missing. Next, please. Assyrians are devout Christians, and they believed in the Word of God. So they became missionaries. They took the Word of God to India, China, Philippines, and as far as Japan. But this evangelization came to an abrupt end when Taimur Lane, or Taimur the Lame, which is a Persian term, came in and attacked the people in the region, and that suddenly stopped the evangelization. One more? Thanks. So let us focus on the persecution that we've been through. Go ahead, please. A lot of people believe that this is the first time Assyrians have faced persecution. Since the rise of Islam, it is documented that every 45 years, Christians have been killed in the hands of Islamist extremists. From mid-1800s to early 2000, every generation has been affected. My great-grandfather died in a camp in Urmia. His wife was kidnapped by Kurds along with 2 of her daughters. My parents fled, whoever was remaining among my family members fled to Russia to take refuge. They were persecuted in the hands of Stalin, fled back to Iran, and then I faced persecution. So as you see, if we have approximately 4 million Assyrians throughout the world, every member of our community has a story to tell. Every one of us is affected by these atrocities. World War I, how many of you know of Greek and Armenian genocide? How many of you are aware that Assyrians have been killed alongside of Armenians? Not many talk about the Assyrian genocide. 75% of our nation was killed during World War I. Move on to the next one, please. This slide shows that the Kurdish women were burning Assyrian women's bodies because they thought the Assyrian women had swallowed gold. This is our archbishop that was gunned down by the Kurd. These atrocities were committed by the Turks and the Kurds during World War I. Next, please. Another big massacre, and a very important one, is Simele. Simele was and is a large village in the northern part of Iraq. As you know, Iraq became a state, an independent state, in 1932. 1933 brought with it massacre, bloodshed on our people, organized by the Iraqi government. As witnesses say, men were dressed in blue suits. Those were Iraqi military. Along with Kurds, they recruited Kurds to kill, and they would pay a pound, an English pound, to every person who came and brought an Assyrian head with it. I have 2 pieces of stone from Simele. Every time I hold these stones in my hands, I feel the cries of those young girls that were burnt by the Bibles that were used as fuel. This is a documented fact. Just as priests are being mutilated today, they were mutilated then. Children were flung in the air, and they were bayoneted. Women, pregnant women, their abdomens were ripped. Women were forced into slavery. They were forced into walking naked, being paraded in front of Iraqi army. Every time I touch these stones, that's what I think of. I think of the pain my people have gone through. Fast forwarding to the recent genocide. There has been a systematic ethno-religious cleansing underway since 2003 in our ancestral homeland, Iraq. It all began with bombing of the churches. To date, our churches have been bombed over 80 times. About 50 churches, 49 churches, 80 times. Many monasteries, the crosses have been taken down, and they have been turned into mosques. There were letters sent to Christian homes beginning in 2003, 2004, giving them three options. Either pay jizya, which is a form of tax that non-Muslims pay to Muslims during war for protection, pay or convert to Islam, or leave. And when people did not take that seriously, then they started assaulting family members. They would knock on the door at 4 a.m., 5 a.m., either forcing them to leave with whatever clothing they had on their back, or they would murder them. Priests started receiving, go ahead, next slide, please. Priests started receiving bloody bullets, and that was the mark of death for them. Next, please. The next priest that you see here is Father Ragid. He had just returned from Rome to Mosul. And he wrote a letter to his friends in Rome and said, I will be a martyr. Situation is very bad, but I refuse to leave. 7 o'clock, 3 of his deacons and he had finished Mass. They were returning when their car was stopped. Their car was riddled with bullets. Their car was booby-trapped, so the police would not be able to retrieve their bodies. Next. That's Archbishop Faradrahu. Father Ragid, whom you just saw, was his secretary. Archbishop Faradrahu, who was Chaldean, a month before he was kidnapped for the second time, went on a radio station in Australia and said, I am the son of this land. I will not be taken out of this country. I will die. I will not leave my people, because they had asked him to leave the country. He was kidnapped the first time. The community raised money and they released him. The second time, he made one phone call and he said, do not pay the ransom they're asking for. These murderers have made a business of this. He was kidnapped in February. They found his body on March 13th, 2008, on the side of the road without any injuries. They had poisoned him through his nostrils. Next, please. These are graphic images. I want to warn you. These two children were home alone. They killed Ranit first and Rafid second. The family had asked for protection, but it never came. Next image, you will see their father holding his children's pictures, just because they're Christian. This is a heartbreaking story. These two of these women used to work for an American base in Baghdad. And as you know, Friday is the day of holiday in the Middle East. They were returning home on Thursday afternoon for a wedding. Their mother tells me, I waited, and they never came. The next day, a neighbor's son ran to her and said, come claim your daughters in the morgue. What had happened was, in the taxi, they had stopped the taxi, the Islamist murderers. They had spared the driver, so he would be giving the testimony of what they had done to these two girls. They shot one 7 times in her back, one 4 times in her head. We Assyrians mourn our deceased 3 days, 7 days, and 40 days after the burial. On the 40th day of their memorial, their father dies of a heart attack. We all believe that he passed away of a heartbreak. On the day of his funeral, the 3rd daughter was taken and beaten to death. Next slide will show you an actual threat letter that was sent to their youngest daughter, Miriam. And it says, if you do not leave, your fate will be the same as your sister's. Miriam and her mother are in Skokie today, and they're trying to build their lives. When I first met them, I didn't have a word that I could offer. What can you say to somebody who's lost 4 of her family members just because they're Assyrian Christians? Next, please. Bless you. The atrocities continue. On May 2nd, 2010, 4 buses filled with Christian students were driving from their small cities or villages to Mosul University to take their final exams. A car came in packed with bombs, and there was a young man from inside a Chaldean, a Christian Assyrian. From inside his store, he saw all these things that were happening outside. He ran outside, flagged the buses down. They slowed down. The bomb went off. He was perished. 189 students were injured, 2 killed, 9 lost their eyes. These are some images from inside the bus. And these kids were just simply going to take their final exam. That is all they were doing. And they're scarred. This is outside of one of the buses. Again, the next images are graphic. Can you imagine that? Those who have children, God forbid, can you imagine what that would do to a parent to see their child like this? This is a young man who is a modern-day martyr. When we think of martyrs, we tend to think 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Am I correct? Every day we have martyrs, modern-day martyrs in the Middle East. And that young lady died of her injuries on way to the hospital. Yet they hold on to their faith. Imagine waking up in the morning and looking at this simply because she was an Assyrian Christian. So in the audience, if you have anyone who is a plastic surgeon, or if there are any doctors present in the room who are plastic surgeons, please. If you want to sponsor these kids to come here to perform any reconstructive surgeries, please let us know. We're in touch with them. We helped them by sending them $7,000 for their medication. 50 students were helped. This is the type of reporting we receive from Iraq. We get their names, their phone numbers, their signatures, and also pictures that you will see. The young lady on the bottom right there is the sister of Sandy, who perished of her injuries on the way to the hospital. Lady of Our Salvation was a tragedy, yet another tragedy. On October 31st, Our Lady of Salvation Cathedral came under attack. 8 attackers, one of them a Yemeni 14-year-old boy, stormed the church, held everyone hostage. Now, the interesting thing is, when this happened, prior to this, people who were in Syria, a few of them started returning back to rebuild their lives in Baghdad. So some of these who perished here had lived, escaped to Syria, came back to rebuild their lives, and they died during this attack. ISI, Islamic State of Iraq, took responsibility for this. 58 killed, and the rest were injured. Majority were injured. This is before the attack. Look at what a beautiful church this is. And this is what came of it. I'd like to read to you briefly an interview that was given to Asia News by one of the people that is a witness. At one point, while I was wounded on the ground, I tried to crawl to the altar and hide behind a wall. One terrorist was wounded and kept saying to his leader, "I'm hurt. I'll detonate the explosive belt so I can become a martyr and go straight to heaven." At first, the man, who must have been the commander, told him to wait, that was not the right time. Then the wounded man said, "No, I'm in too much pain. I was hit." So the commander gave him permission, and they bade each other farewell, saying, "Okay, see you in heaven." Then he blew himself up. His companions then began to shout, "You are unbelievers. You will go to hell while we will go to heaven. Allahu Akbar. God is the greatest." The same eyewitness laments, "Father Tahir, the priest who celebrated Mass, died because he wanted to save the children. Father Wasim, who at the time of the attack was in the confessional, tried to talk with the terrorists to convince them to let the people and the children go, and only to take the 2 of them hostage. They offered their lives. Father Wasim, when he approached the terrorist, he was shot. The last sentence that Father Tahir, who died before the eyes of his mother, who survives him today and now is recovering in France, said was, "Jesus, into thy hands I commend my spirit." Father Tahir, representing the love of Christ, was dressed in a beautiful white and blue vestment, demonstrating peace and glory, while the Islamist terrorist wore a bomb vest. These are some graphic images also. There's a child who died, and you will see shortly, this is baby Adam, who became the face of their plight at this time. There will be a video shortly his aunts say, he said for 3 hours, the whole hostage taking period lasted about 4 hours. For 3 hours, this child screamed, "Enough, enough," and finally they shot him dead.
كنيستنا وثاني شيء طلع القص عليهم أبونا وسيم إنه ده يهدي الوضع وشيء وراسنا ضربوهم وقع من طوله. بعدين وراهم القص أبونا ثار همين ضربوه همين وقع من طوله. أنا بالموقع اللي كنت بيه أني بس أنا وميرنا أختي وعدي الشهيد وآدم ابن الشهيد ومرته وبنته. ومن عدا العالم اللي كانوا ويانا يعني أكيد عالم هو هي الكنيسة كانت بيها وماما راحت بغير مكان يعني هي ماما ما رادت تعوفنا بس يعني من الهوزة اللي صارت وهم دخلوا صاروا بنص الكنيسة وإحنا انفصلنا يعني كان لازم ننفصل لأنه دخلوا بنص الكنيسة خلال ثواني ما نعرف شلون وصلوا لنا. دخلوا لحد ما وصلوا علينا ضربوا يعني كل شيء ضربوا بالكنيسة حتى السبالد طقوها علينا الغد كلها يمنا صار لأن نايمين احنا على صفحة السبالد وبعدين قاموا يضربون طلقات هيك يعني عشوائي وشافوا الصليب يصيحوا لنا كفرة احنا كفرة ويصيح الله أكبر. يمي واقفة ويمي كان يمرش لي حتى سلاحة يمرش لي كل هذا كنت أتوقع إنه أنا اللي راح أموت لأن أنا آخر وحدة كنت نايمة يعني بالقاع الحي قريب.
What does that make you feel? How does that make you feel? They call their God the greatest. God the greatest. God is the greatest, and yet they take innocent lives. You know, at the end of this portion of my speech, as I know we'll have more time to talk about what the solutions should be, we'll have more time later, I'd like to conclude by saying a quote from one of those people that got killed during this attack. Eyewitnesses recall that somebody started screaming, we die, okay. But the cross lives on forever. And then he was silenced. Thank you.